I'm Sokyo, director of the New Latin Wave, and I want to give you the welcome to the New Latin Wave Arts Festival 2021, this time online. We have put a lot of love creating a program that can reflect all the questions that all our followers around the globe have about how to deal with the pandemic and creativity. We are kicking off with an interview with musician, artist, Xenia Ruinas. This is our first event now. And later, we'll have a workshop about how to create your own Instagram filters with Sofia Suazo. And later in the day, we'll have the play Nanas, a production from La Micro Theater. And to end the day, a party with Radio Ramses. So we are very excited to have you today, and we expect to connect with you the rest of the week. Check the website. We have a great program, lots of activities, lots of conversations that are very important for Latinx folks in the US. And we hope we can answer some of your doubts. And if not, we always think we can do better. So let us know. Stick around. Hi, I'm Sokyo, director of the New Latin Wave, and I want to give you the welcome to the New Latin Wave Arts Festival 2021, this time online. We have put a lot of love creating a program that can reflect all the questions that all our followers around the globe have about how to deal with the pandemic and creativity. We are kicking off with an interview with musician, artist, Xenia Ruinas. This is our first event now. And later, we'll have a workshop about how to create your own Instagram filters with Sofia Suazo. And later in the day, we'll have the play Nanas, a production from La Micro Theater. And to end the day, a party with Radio Ramses. So we are very excited to have you today, and we expect to connect with you the rest of the week. Check the website. We have a great program, lots of activities, lots of conversations that are very important for Latinx folks in the US. And we hope we can answer some of your doubts. And if not, we always think we can do better. So let us know. Stick around. Hi, Xenia. How are you?
Hi, Sokyo. I'm good. How are you?
Well, still enjoying the pandemic inside my apartment. What about you?
I'm enjoying the winter actually a little bit. Not maybe the cold, but the season. I'm enjoying it because it's cozy. There's something really cozy and like reclusive about it. So I'm liking it.
Do you use the word reclusive? I think I heard that before coming from you. What do you like about this aspect of winter?
I like that winter can feel meditative and feel introspective, and there's not as much pressure to go out and see a bunch of people or just there's a lot going on where I live in the city, or where I hang out in the city, where I go to see shows and see people. There's always 3 million things going on that like I'm missing something, and not to say that there aren't a lot of things that happen in winter, but it's always like, oh, it's really cold. I couldn't go. I couldn't, whatever, the weather's really whatever. So I couldn't make it. So I enjoy that it kind of, everything slows down a little in terms of that aspect. And you can kind of hibernate a little bit and just be more introspective. And there's something relaxing about it in a way, in that way. You know, it's not as relaxing that you can't go for a walk and go to the beach and go and do, you know, like chill, like the spring and the summer make you want to chill, like hang out. But there's something introspective that I like about it. And I like working in the winter.
Huh.
I like being like working, I should say working on writing music or recording music, because performing is working too, but I like working on creating a new project in January. I like it a lot.
So do you still feel that you need a balance, like winter time for writing and then summer for touring or doing other stuff?
Yeah, I think performing or traveling in the spring and the summer is really nice. I think, you know, it's nice since recording and writing is usually done inside and sometimes in like dark places with no windows. It's nice to do that in the winter when it's cold outside and you wouldn't be out there anyway, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. I'm sorry, un momento. This sun is kind of, the sun is
it's
setting,
beautiful.
so it's kind of, is it okay?
I mean, I love it, unless it's bothering your eyes.
No, it's not bothering me. I just wasn't sure if it was like too much for you for the video. No?
It can be, but it's still super cool.
Okay. Dale.
No, maybe you are too yellow.
It's too much, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. Is it weird that I changed position?
No.
You can make it a thing.
Yeah.
Let me see.
We'll keep all of this conversation.
Let's test. Let's see. Estoy hecho una etcétera hoy. ¿Ves? Como que.
¿Una etcétera?
Estoy hecho una etcétera. You've never
Nunca
heard
escuché
that?
eso. Yeah.
No?
No.
Estoy hecho una etcétera. It's like I'm a mess. I'm a mess today.
Wow. Is that Puerto Rican or Cuban or New Yorican? I don't know.
Neutral? I don't know.
Neutral?
Neutral. Look, this is my
Oh,
my
this
sound.
is great.
This is my
Yeah.
vocal booth.
Thank
vocal
God.
booth.
Thank
You
God
know?
it's not your closet.
Keeping the realness. Keeping the realness. Okay. This is better, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Y-
where are we?
Tengo mi brujita.
Oh. ¿Cómo se llama la brujita?
No tiene nombre.
Why?
I don't know. My family in Cuba sent me this brujita when I was a baby, basically, and it used to hang. She used to hang from my ceiling
Huh. Oh.
when I was a baby. And I've had her ever since. She's been through a hard time. She lost part of her escoba,
broom.
her broom. And she has like this for like hanging now, but she's still out here.
So
On my first record, Magic Tricks, she's on the cover. She's like one of the things on the cover, I think.
You're right.
Yes. She's like one of my guardian things, like keeps me safe.
So La Brujita has been with you your whole life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for introducing La Brujita to everybody.
You're welcome. I had to. She's sitting right next to me, so
Yeah, you need to acknowledge her.
you know it's rude.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So, wintertime, working on music, being totally cozy. So, what's your routine?
What is my routine? Well, to be honest, it changes. And this year in January, I'm spending time out of New York City for the first time, like a significant amount of time. Up here, I'm in upstate New York. And since I'm surrounded by nature and it's a new space and it's like a transition to something new, I have been asking myself about my daily ritual and exactly what is it? Because I've felt for the past years that I'm not sure that I have one. I'm like, I don't even know what is my schedule. I got this book called Daily Rituals that brings you through It's really fun, actually. It's a very light read. It brings you through the daily rituals of a ton of artists like Pablo Picasso, Joyce Carol Oates, like from all different mediums. And it just shares what they do every day, what they eat. And so I was like looking at it for inspiration and thinking like, oh, do I like any of these? Like, do I, like, do any of these like attract me? Maybe I can borrow some of their rituals. So I'm starting like just slowly just to notice what I do for the first time. I like started writing it down. And it's a little bit like scary because, it's, it's like it depends. I go through periods, but right now I'm working on my new record. I'm almost done. And I've been working from, well, my start time varies, but I work until around 2. And so in the morning. So when I work at that late, I usually wake up around 10. I like to get like 7, 8 hours of sleep. I function the best like that. It doesn't always happen. So I average around 10 a.m. I wake up and I'm kind of like, I try to have like a nature moment. I try to have a moment with nature, just like look out the window, try to just, I try to have a moment for myself, like lay on the floor. And then I go into like cafecito. I have café con leche with sugar. And then I go on my phone. I'm looking at everybody, scrolling and being like, why am I doing this? And then I'm looking through emails. I start to do kind of like more officey type of stuff, logistical type of things I do in the morning. And then eventually I warm up my coffee like probably 2 times. Because it gets cold in between me. Like I step away from it, I leave it. So it's like maybe around 2 times. And then sometimes I go for a second one. And then I like shower, dress. And then at some point I'll be like, I didn't eat breakfast. I should eat breakfast. I've been trying to do oatmeal and fruit, but sometimes I just eat toast or a cookie. It really depends. Raisin Bran, that's like my go-to. It's like really boring, but it does the trick. A banana, and then I get to work usually around noon. And then I go for a couple hours. I usually eat lunch around 3 or 4. Then maybe I'll go outside and take a walk, like really brief walk. Maybe I'll talk to a friend, and then I'll work again for the rest of the day about like 5 to midnight. At midnight is dinner, and then midnight is dinner. Yeah, so like 11 until 11. Let's say 5 to 11 is the night shift, and then 11 to 12 is cooking, and 12 is dinner, and then like wind down. I might listen to what I did from like after dinner from like 1 to 2 and think about what I'm gonna do tomorrow. So that was pretty good, right? That was detailed.
No, this was intense.
You can tell I've been thinking about it. Well, I eat a lot of veggies.
Oh, I really wanted to know that. Okay, so veggies.
I'm not vegetarian, but I do eat like a good amount of meatless meals. Yeah.
So, okay, but have you tried the Impossible Burger or stuff like that?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I'm like, I go through phases. Like sometimes if you eat too much tofu and meatless, like meat substitutes, you get tired of it. You can't eat that all the time,
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to, if you don't want to eat meat, you have to go with a vegetable. But I feel like when I'm lazy, sometimes I do that. Sometimes I do like, chicken, like without the E, like fake chicken, or like, this kind of seitan is actually pretty good. Yeah, there's some good stuff, and there's some like where you feel like you're just eating a shoe or something, and you're like, what am I eating? But yeah,
my only problem with those foods is that there's a lot of bean involved, or
beans,
some
kind of bean. Yeah, you don't like that. You don't like beans.
I love beans.
But not okay. You don't want them like mashed up in a machine and then make it in like a square. Yeah.
And pay for it.
Yeah, I understand that. I can see that.
Okay, so let's go back. I love your routine.
You
I
do?
Yeah, and you just covered a lot of my questions.
Really?
No, no. So, okay, now we know how do you work, how your day goes. Um, but this is related to the new space you are working now, or this has been the same way 2020 or before?
2020, I mean, these years are weird because we're in a pandemic. So, but for the most part, I mean, I go through phases. Sometimes I've had, times where I'm more physical, like I'm not really doing a lot of physical activity, which I don't like, but sometimes I'll have more like dance time or more singing time, more writing time. Right now I'm recording. So I'm
Mhm.
recording, I'm mixing. So that's kind of like, that's my schedule right now. But overall, I tend to work, I've always tended to write and do things like starting in the afternoon. That's usually my thing till late. I'm not
Mhm.
really in the first part of the day. I mean, I have had periods where I force myself to start, at 10 or something, but or usually 11 to be honest. But that's tricky because by the time you get into a thing, it's like lunchtime, so there's that interruption, So I think I work best in short increments. Like I think 3 hours is a good amount of time actually to get into a thing and say like, okay, I have 3 hours. Usually I don't make it and I'm like, okay, 4 hours. But because if I get into a thing, then it's like, oh, hold on. I'm gonna just a couple more minutes and then it's been 4 hours. But I think for me personally, my brain is better like that than as opposed to like a 6 hour chunk, which right now I'm doing longer chunks as I have a deadline and I just have to do it. But I think, yeah, my schedule has always been more or less that, except for when I used to work in an office. I used to work 40 hours a week in an office and then do my music when I wasn't working. So, yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know. So
Mhm.
what were you working? What was your job?
I worked for about 8 years at Jazz at Lincoln Center, which is a performing arts organization, nonprofit that has educational programs. It has a performance space venues. And I was working in their education department, developing curriculum to teach young children about jazz and their parents, young children and their parents about jazz music.
Do you miss that?
No,
Not the job, the aspect of teaching kids.
no,
Wow, cool.
not at all. Yeah. I mean, I also only taught for a very short period of time because the majority of my time there was more administrative. And then at the very end, I did have a period of teaching. I'm just personally, I mean, the kids and the families were super sweet, and and also some of the people who I worked with were also really cool, and I miss some of them. I keep in touch with some of them. However, I just don't enjoy teaching. But if you see me teaching, don't be surprised. But I don't really, it's just not really my calling.
Hmm.
It's just not like, a lot of people have asked me like, oh, do you do private lessons, or would you, oh my gosh, you would be a great teacher, or just invite me to do a thing, or like, oh, why don't you do workshops or something? And I'm just like, I just don't feel like I have anything to say. Like, I just don't feel like I have anything to tell you about what you should be doing, or
Hmm.
like how you should be going about it. And maybe that's because I never had great teachers myself, you know? So, but I think some people have more of a propensity, it can be rewarding. Like I definitely have had experiences where I was like just like emotionally affected by my experience, like just seeing, like feeling like I had a real exchange with these kids, and they were like kids are super inspiring to be around. I think the best thing was like learning about play and learning about how kids play. and how kids learn, because that was really inspiring to me as a musician, about improvisation. It's kind of a lot of the crossover about like a 3-year-old and about me. Like when I'm making something is a lot in common. But yeah, I don't have a propensity to be attracted to teaching at all. I just don't.
I feel you. I'm in the same place.
And maybe I could rock with like a really like baby and their parents, but I can't rock with a teenager. Like this is really challenging for me, very challenging. I will say I had like one experience that was really rewarding, visiting my friend's class, like middle school class. And I just like, after I visited, I like cried. It was super intense. I could see myself in some of those kids. Like that was dope. That was really dope. But so I guess maybe there's a couple of like, now I'm realizing like maybe there's a little bit, but I'm like, no. Like when you ask me, I'm like, no. Yeah.
Yeah, and you start opening your heart to this memories.
And I'm like, next year I'll start at my own academy, like you'll see me and be like, what is going on?
Oh my God. That would be a change.
It would.
Oh my God.
You never know.
Never. So let me ask you, so let's go back to the routine, the nighttime creative moment and dinner at midnight. So what have you discovered about how to set up a space, a space to be creative? Do you have a special way of setting up the space? How does it work for you?
That is a really good question. And it's a question I'm asking myself right now. I usually, I've never really had my own studio space until very recently. I've always kind of shared my space with my collaborator, Marco Buccelli. We, have shared our studio for more than a decade. And so we would take turns, and I would mostly just kind of get a corner in the house and kind of make a whatever, like a temporary setup. And one thing is that I always I would always get tired of it. I would like buy a desk, and I would, okay, and I'm going to put this rug here, and I'm going to sit on the floor over there, and I'm going to, leave my bass over here. And then after like 2 or 3 months, I would be like, I hate this desk. I hate this space, so I would like constantly move around. And one thing that I learned is that I really work better when I have a window, when I have natural light. It's nice to be able to make a ton of noise and not care, and have a lot of privacy, which sometimes entails being in a basement that's closed off and has no windows. So you can be super loud and don't care and like don't feel like anybody's listening to you. But just last year, for the first time, I had my own studio space outside of my house, and it was great. But then we had the pandemic, and I stopped going. So, and I think the idea there was to have it. One of the things that I started doing was like burning Palo Santo, burning sage, burning candles, having some kind of ritual to like start off my session. I like to have my instruments like very available so that I don't have to like put them back and take them up again, and I just try to have everything open and everything on, and so that I can flow. But right now I have a new studio space. I have the studio where we're recording and mixing, and then I have this room that I'm sitting in right now, which is going to be just my space. Mm-hmm. And it's a room of my own. I'm like Virginia Woolf with a room of my own. And right now it's empty, except for a vocal booth, which is like this right here. That's like a makeshift. I had to do some vocals for another project. And I did them in there, but it's empty. It's completely empty, and I'm going to leave it empty until I brought my brujita in here. I dried some fruits for Christmas. I dried oranges and I brought them in here because they smell nice, but I'm going to like only put things in here little by little. Like I did a recording project in here and I took everything out again. My goal is to just, when I feel it, I could put something up on the wall, I could bring a thing in. But right now, is like the first time in my life that I can do this. You know, I can have an empty room. I tend to start very like minimal, but I'm not a minimalist, like at all. Like at all. Like in my music, I tend to be, but in real life, I'm like, I tend to just, I hold on to things. I tend to just make a mess. I tend to make a mess and it gets really crowded. But in this space, I'm trying to leave it open for dance. I really want to dance in this space. So I'm like, I think I'm going to do a closet desk. I'm going to do like a desk inside the closet. So when I'm not using it, I can just shut it and I don't have to see it. And then I can just dance. So that was a long answer, but I'm figuring it out. I'll get back to you.
So let's talk about shape. The shape of your day changes depending on the season. You're seasonal, right? And also it depends on what kind of project are you doing. Okay, so tell me, your songs, you just mentioned that you try to be as minimalist as possible in the creation itself and the production, and that is pretty noticeable. But at the same time, they are incredibly explosive and super rich harmonically. So what is for you shape? How do you work that shape in your songs? So what it matters for you?
And in terms of shape, I mean, I think I usually start with some kind of rhythmic idea. It's usually where I start. So rarely I start with a melody. Usually it's I write a beat or I have a rhythmic thing in mind. And I kind of build from there and I try to just let the idea go, like just let it go where it wants. It's kind of like I'm following it, like I'm not really making it. So I follow it, and then recently I've been writing more song-like structures for this record. I'm more just kind of doing songs. So a lot of times I'm thinking about kind of like a verse and hook and bridge type of structure, like a kind of a standard structure. And then I'm kind of like, you know, I'm kind of destroying it and building it back together and messing with it. But that's been really fun recently to think about kind of building, a basis, kind of in a hip hop sense, like building a beat, building a track, and then like skating over it, you know, and like exploding it like that. I also liked, for example, there's a song on this record that I started, which is actually not a standard song structure at all. And I worked on it a bunch and then I left it alone. And it's kind of like this experimental rumba inspired piece with this long intro that is not really an intro. It almost sounds like a different piece. And then then the song part kind of starts. And then there's a really short hook that's in the style of like a sonero, where there's like el coro that sings and then somebody responds. And then there's like a random verse that comes in. So I had all of this idea about it being like it's like my interpretation of what rumba could be like, or rumba guaguancó could be like. And then I left it alone. And when I came back to it, I was like, I hate it. Like, I don't like this. And what I do is when I make something that is my interpretation of like a style or an idea, when I find myself being a little bit too kind of like obedient to that, I feel like it falls flat, and I like the shape of it falls flat, and I like to cut I like to cut it, like cortarlo. I don't know, like if your drink is too strong, you might put like more seltzer in it, so that, or like, you know, or I guess it's the opposite for me, is like the drink is too flat and I'm adding like another shot or something. Yeah. So I like to cut it. I like to cut the flavor of that with something else. So I ended up kind of destroying that destroying the song and like completely changing the concept of what that was, and basically left all of the vocals that were rumba inspired and then took everything away from it, and made it more about what I know more of than I don't know. I'm not a rumba musician. I've never studied that music. There's so much that I don't know. So, and the majority of my music is like that. I think that it's rich in like all different kinds of music, but I'm not literally doing that thing. You know, I'm not ever literally doing a thing. But for instance, in this track, I decided to go more of like a hip hop approach. And that sound is something that I just know more than a rumba guaguancó, although I grew up listening to that music, but I just have more like experience, and like that's more the music that I grew up on in a way when I was a teenager, and like I just wanted a harder, aggressive shape to it. So I don't know if I'm answering your question about shape, but yeah, it's important to me that a piece has a dynamic shape, that it doesn't, when a piece starts to fall flat, it just becomes uninteresting to me. And I want it to be surprising, you know? I want it to be surprising in its own way. It doesn't always, it's also really pleasurable to write a super simple track. You know, that's also very pleasurable. But I think I like that a track has a shape that is bringing you somewhere, you know? Did I answer your question?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, as I said at the beginning, this is super free form, and I think we are trying to make questions that not necessarily have a prepared
I like it.
answer, you know. But
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the questions. I like it.
cool. So you mentioned trying to imitate or to approach a style or even a musician, the style of certain composer. Do you go always to the artists you already know, or you are trying to make research and try to learn more? How?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No. How does that work for you? But how do you do it?
I usually start with something that I know that that I try to reference. A lot of times, the references come after I wrote something or after I recorded it. So a lot of times, I write something or I record it, and I'm in the process of I have all of the basics down of like, okay, these are all the ideas, and then it's time to flesh it out and do more production, like produce it more. And sometimes you know exactly where you're going and you already know like, I want like this, I want like that. But then other times you realize you don't know which direction you want to take this thing in, or you're taking it somewhere and you're stuck. Like all of a sudden you get stuck, and like there's a keyboard sound, like a synth sound, or there's a drum sound that you want, and you can't, like, you're like, I don't know what I want. And like everything that you're doing doesn't sound right, but you don't like, you're like, okay. So then at that moment, it's time to press pause, and you're like, okay, I need to find references. And that's when you go, or for me, that's when I go and I look for references. And so sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what I'm referencing here. A lot of times I'm like, don't know where to look. So then finally, it could be something lyrical. It could be like one sound in it. For example, in my track Diosa, I was using hand claps for the first time, like digital hand claps. And so I started going down this rabbit hole of hand claps. And I ended up learning like the history of digital hand claps. I found this great article, and hand claps used in all different kinds of music, and like different drum machines, the different hand clap sounds, like what hand clap sounds are associated with what genre or style, because I was like, okay, what hand clap am I using? Like what does this recall? What does this, if you hear this hand clap, what is this hand clap from? So doing stuff like that, I end up learning new music and new artists that I didn't know about. And that's really exciting. Sometimes when you're on a deadline, it's not very conducive, because you end up spending like hours like listening to hand claps, and maybe that's not what you need, you know, or like you find some amazing YouTube clip of this composer and you're like, oh my God, like yeah. And then you start watching like hours of this dude who invented some keyboard in the 70s. And like, and like at the end of the day, you don't even remember why, like what you were looking for. And you're like, oh my God, 4 hours have gone by and I still don't have a synth sound, you know? But so that happens, and it's fun, you know, it's exciting. Sometimes I have to limit myself, but I try, recently I've been trying to be more organized with references, and I, you know, in my G Drive, I start folders of where I collect references. I make playlists. I always make playlists for references, like sometimes for every track has its own playlist. And then like visual references, a lot of visual references, video clips. Sometimes it's like a vibe, like looking for a vibe. The other day I referenced Sábado Gigante, which is like a variety show that I don't know if it's still on TV, but I referenced that and started watching like El Chacal de la Trompeta, which was, for those who don't know, was like this segment on this show, which was like a Saturday night, like couple hours show that your grandma always watched kind of thing. And they had this segment where audience members sing basically karaoke, you know, and they're like, if they sound bad, this guy comes out and plays a trumpet and kicks them out, you know, and then at the end, somebody wins the competition. So there's like little things like that where I'm like, oh, El Chacal, like this is like El Chacal or whatever, you know. It's like it can feel really random, but it really does help. It really, really does help. And sometimes I'm referencing things that I know, and a lot of times by referencing that thing, I find a lot of new stuff that I never heard of.
That was pretty comprehensive. This was great. So,
oh my God.
Which artists are... No.
I talk so much. Yo hablo, estoy como una pluma que cuando tú la abres, se acabó.
No, está perfecto.
Good luck. Buena suerte in editing. Sorry.
So, which artists are inspiring you today? In this playlist you create for everything, where are the great ones?
Oof. Okay. Well, okay, so there are some artists that are references, but they're not like necessarily inspiring me making music, or like the music that I would just put on and listen to. So it's different. Sometimes like references are more like a librarian. It's more like research, but it's not necessarily like you know, like an overarching, like I want to listen to this artist. I'm right now really feeling Arca. I'm just super into their work and their sonics. It's super different from the music that I make and that I know, but I just find it really exciting. I'm listening to, I think the album is called Stretch 2. It's one of their earlier albums, and it's mostly, I don't know, some kind of experimental hip hop, minimalist kind of scenario. And there's this one song called Broke Up, and I just don't get tired of listening to that song. I could listen to it every day. So that's somebody who hasn't been inspiring me. Who else? I've been on a Bad Bunny kick. Like, I wouldn't say, like, I think what's inspiring to me about that music is that it's pop music of this moment, and that I don't really usually listen to the pop music of that moment, like the number one hit. I don't really have that many experiences in my life where I actually listen to something in the moment that it's extremely popular. I might listen to older stuff that was very popular, but not like in that moment. And I think what listening to Bad Bunny has taught me, and like I got to see him live, is like, it's been a little bit humbling. It's been a little bit like, oh, okay, people listen to music because it makes them feel like a gangster, or it makes them feel fun, or this song is about, like, reminds them of their breakup, or this song, whatever they want to crank it with their girls going out. And it kind of just reminded me, sometimes I get really dorky or really precious about music on a different tip. And I think what it's taught me or has been inspiring is like, sometimes you just got to keep things simple. And like, I've been thinking a lot about what's corny, you know, and it's something like, or what's cheesy. And that's something that I struggle with a lot, because I'll have an idea or I'll say something in my music. It's usually around lyrics. I hate writing lyrics. I hate it. I hate it. Like so much that I'm like, I should just write instrumental music. Like I'm just over it. I love singing though. And usually people sing with words, not all the time. But I really struggle with lyrics, and sometimes I'll write something that's just very honest and it's what it is. And I'm like, oh my God, is that corny? Is that cheesy? And then I'll like agonize over it. And I'll be like, oh my God. And I'll say like, Marco, what do you think? Like, is that really corny? And he's like so kind. He's like, I don't think so. He's like 99% of the time, he's like, no. But I think listening to somebody like Bad Bunny, a huge pop star, kind of humbles me into the simplicity of things. And like, if it hits and it works, it works. Like, it doesn't matter. Like a lot of times I think when I think, oh, is this corny or is this cheesy? It's just, I'm scared. Like, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just, I'm afraid of saying that thing or doing that thing. And in the music, there might be a part I wrote and I'm like, is that corny? Like, so I think that's inspiring. That's really inspiring.
And how that works with this change, let's call it that way, from a more freeform way of making music, and now that you are making more song-like style, how well is this listening to more in the now music part of this change, or?
To be honest, I think I went through a really, really difficult year. In 2019 was one of the most difficult years of my life. And I I had to restart. I had to like press restart. And I didn't know, I started really going back and working on this record. I've been working on this record for a really long time, on and off. And I really started like in earnest at the beginning of 2020. And when I started, I didn't know if I would be able, I was sure I wouldn't be able to do it. I was like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. Like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I was really at the point where I was like, I think I need to do something else. Like, I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't doing well emotionally. And I think I was very far away from myself and from everything, including music. So starting with song structures, like basic song structure, was really helpful for me when I was starting to write again, because it just gave me something to go for, you know, it wasn't about like, okay, like, let me like zone in on my Zen like moment with, not that I don't do this when I'm about to write, by the way. I don't do that. No shade to anybody who does, but I don't do it. But, you know, I don't like zone in, and like, I wasn't doing that, you know? So it was because I just didn't have it in me. So having that structure was a really good place to start. You know, it was and I was also very detached in this process. So it was more like, okay, I'm going to write a beat and let's see where this beat goes. Oh, let's try this thing, you know? And I was very much like, okay, let me hop in here and write lyrics. Like, and that's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, is writing things in the studio and recording them immediately, which is not what I come from. I come from like kind of more of a jazz approach, like kind of more a composer approach, where I write and I keep it to myself for a really long time until I think it's done. And then I'll share it, or I'll collaborate with someone, or like a producer or another artist or whatever. And in this case, I was writing in the studio, like right in the moment. And a lot of the vocal takes that are on this record are my first take. Like when I wrote it, they made it, which I wasn't, you know, it wasn't my intention. I was like, okay, I'm going to lay down a scratch vocal and then I'll figure it out. But they ended up being the vast majority of them are first takes. So I think, you know, the standard song structure just kind of really helped anchor me. And it was almost like a writing prompt, you know? It was like, okay, you're not, which I do sometimes, you're not feeling it today, but you need to write. I give myself like, okay, a little exercise, and I do it. So that's what that came to be. But then as I started coming back to life, a little bit, or not coming, like restarting and finding a new relationship with this music, stuff started happening. So then there are some tracks on this record that are, you know, they're their own thing. Like they're definitely not, you know, a standard song structure. But yeah, I think it came out of like starting again, restart. Gave me like the song structure gave me something to stand on.
I always thought that creating is like reborn every time. If each album or piece that you want to put together, it responds to the moment. You know, you have been in this process, and then your music or your writing changes according to that. So it makes total sense what you're saying, and it also is really beautiful to hear that that all these emotional changes influence directly the product, the creative product you're trying to bring to life. Environment, time of the day, racing, the breakfast, el cafecito calentado. So, how is Hushadia part of this? Of which moment? It seems to me it's like more from the first moment where you were just freeing yourself.
Yeah, Hushasha was actually happened pretty quickly. I wrote the track I started the beat at the beginning of 2020 from a writing prompt. It was like, okay, you have this sample that you have I had a recording of a ballet performance from Cuba, from the National Ballet Company. It's like very, you know, it's very specific, but I had this sample of music that I really loved. And so the prompt was cut a sample of that and then write something to the sample. So I did that, and that ended up being, I believe that's what that was. I don't know. It could have been that, could have been something else. That ended up being the beat for Hushacha. And it started from the beat, and then I wrote around it and came back to it in the summer. And it just like happened super quickly, super quickly. I was in the studio with Marco, and he was like fleshing out, you know, the sound of this beat and kind of taking my original thing and like tricking it out, pimping it out. And then the next thing I know, I started doing this character in the studio of like this, I just started making this sound like, I started doing this thing like singing with my teeth, which it's the thing that I really like. It's like singing, like if you have fake teeth, you know, like if you have dentures or something. There were these like old singers that kind of like I don't know what that lady's name is, Carol something, whatever, that sings like, she's like, and there's something I really like about that. So I started doing this voice of like, that my mouth is full of teeth, you know, like just thinking about my mouth is full of teeth. And then I ended up going and I have a grill. I ended up putting my grill in, and then like everything happened really quick, and the lyrics came really fast, which was like, thank you, God. And it just all happened. And at that moment, it had come from, being in the studio for a few months during the pandemic and doing that approach of like verse, chorus type of approach. And that track was super important for me because it was the first time in a really long time that everything came together so quickly, and I had an urgency, like, okay, this is the video, this is the track is done, this is the artwork, this is like, and it kind of like really encapsulated what this record, like kind of like put the record together for me, you know? So yeah, it was great to be able to release it so immediately. It's something that's rarely happens, that I'm like able to write, you know, record, do a video, and then put it out like in the sequence of 2 months. Like that never happens basically. So it felt really good, you know, it felt really, really good.
That's amazing. It's 2 months, the song?
Something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
It felt so good. Just the immediacy of it, you know, just to be able to, when you get excited, just to be able to share something right away when you're like still have that fresh, like new car smell to it is like so satisfying.
Yeah. So And what about, because that was your single from 2020? So
Mhm.
what about the song with Helado Negro?
Um, the song with Helado Negro, I believe, was the last like in-person collaboration before the pandemic happened. Like he was actually the last person who I saw before, you know, that I like a friend who I hung out with before. Yeah, exactly. So, and I'm so happy, you know, that that happened and that we got to do it. Roberto is a friend. He's been a friend for years. I discovered his music a long time ago. We played a show in this really random place together, and then we kind of like stayed friends. His show is probably the live show that I've seen the most in my entire life. I've seen it the most times. We've played together several times, but I've just ended up at his shows like so many times. And he's such an inspiring artist and such a beautiful person. And, you know, we share. And so he invited me to his studio where he was working on new music. And I was in this space where I just couldn't do anything. And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, hi, like, I'm a bummer in your studio. Like, why did you invite me here? But we started just riffing. He brought some beats. I just was improvising like vocals over it. We did a track together, and then that track like didn't end up coming out. We didn't end up doing anything. And then he came back and was like, "Yo, I have this other song like." And he sent it to me, which ended up being like "I Fell in Love," the track that we put out together. And so he sent me the beats. He had recorded his vocal parts for it, and then I went in and, you know, wrote some like the verses and stuff. And we got together in the studio for one day to kind of like record my final vocals and just edit it. And he was just so kind and gracious. I had never actually I sang some of his songs with him in the past, and so I got to learn them from that angle. But this is my first time writing with him, and his approach is so different from mine. And like, it was just very refreshing, you know, and exciting to be part of his creative process. And he was really giving with me. I like came in and took a knife to his like arrangement and was like, I think we should cut this. I think we should put this here. And he was just so patient and was like, okay. Like, I found it really inspiring how open he was. He was like, you know, he was a little bit like, but then he did it, you know, and like we went, like he was like, he thought that we were done, and then I like took the scissors out. Yeah, I took the scissors out. And even the title, you know, the title, I was like, we should call it "I Fell in Love." Like, and we were both like, is that really corny? I was like, maybe, but I think it's a thing, you know? And I think that song is an example of something that's just so simple and immediate, you know? It's very like earnest, it's very simple. And I love that. I love his ability to he makes this music that's very pastoral, that's very like, kind of just puts you in an atmosphere and a zone. And he's really good at like riding that zone and staying in that zone and like aprofundizando, like getting deeper and deeper into a zone. So yeah, that was fun.
That's beautiful to hear, because it's a great performance of you, and the song is beautiful. So thank you for sharing a little bit about
Thank
the
you.
creation.
Thank you.
Um, we're wrapping up this. Um, so this year for New Latin Wave, we're asking everybody about how the pandemic affected the creativity, the creative process. We discussed that in another conversation we had some months ago. But I wanted to ask you, what, in relation to the pandemic and creativity, how do you think, do you feel that there's a new way you're doing things musically, creatively, because of the pandemic, or this is the continuation of something that happened during the pandemic?
For me personally, this is a continuation of like my work now is a continuation of just where I've been in my personal life and what was going to happen no matter what. I think something that changed for me in the pandemic was not performing live anymore. And to be honest, I was really struggling with performing live. I was really tired of touring. I really wanted a break, and I had taken a break. I was not performing very often. So in a way, it was kind of like a weight off of my shoulders, not to have that expectation to be performing all the time, or to figure out what to do with every new thing, what's the live aspect of that. So it freed me up to just reconcile, like go back to the roots of why I make music, or like why did I start doing this, and why do I do it? And I think that's something that a lot of people have been reckoning with during the pandemic. Like a lot of people have started like their businesses, or like they quit their job, like a bunch of stuff, like reevaluated their relationships, like broke up, fell in love. Like there's just a lot. It kind of really brought everything to a really, I don't know how to say, like it put you face to face with your stuff. So for me, it brought me back to that space of why do I do this, And I'm about to release a new track very, very soon in the coming days. And that track was like my moment of catalyst, when I remembered why I sing. Like, and it just happened while I was singing it, that I remembered why I sing. And so for me, that's the main change in like music making in the pandemic. And I think, another aspect is just living in this digital world, and like the fact that we're not really interfacing in person, which, I mean, to be honest, a lot of what we have been doing is like sharing our music online. Like that's how we put our music out. That's how we communicate. Like touring and live performance is a big part of that. But if you think about it, like your widest network is online anyway. So I think this time has kind of just reminded me of that, and kind of like, I'm reevaluating my relationship to this digital space. But so far, it's just been really nice to focus on individual tracks and the visual representation of them, and sharing those things digitally. And maybe just like cutting out that performance piece for a minute. Although I'm starting to be like, okay, I could like start to think about what would a performance look like. But something I'm really interested in is all of the online performances that we're seeing, and the ones that are like a little bit more produced, that are treated kind of like their own movie or their short film, or like, involve set design or this kind of stuff. I find that really interesting. I find the virtual concerts, like ticketed events, very interesting. And that's like just something that maybe it happened before, but it's like a new thing, right? It's a new industry of like ticketed online events, and how to engage with people in that way, like doing conferences online, like how do we engage? And I think it's a really interesting propuesta. It's a really interesting new medium, because in a way it's more personal. Like the conversation we're having right now is like, my face is really close to your face. Like we're like, there's an intimacy to it, where I'm in your space and you're in mine. So I think there's a lot of possibilities for new things to explore.
Maybe you're becoming a studio artist.
Oh, that's nice. A studio artist.
Yeah.
That's just somebody, like, what is that? Somebody who makes studio work.
Tear for Fears. They were studio artists. They hated it to go on tour, and they created the band Tears for Fears just to make music in the studio, and they became finally super successful by doing that. Yeah.
Wow. I feel like I'm like, I don't want to tour, but then once I get on the stage, it's like, try to take me off, like try to like get me, like, good luck. Like I'm like the most like, and then this, and then like I'm the most over the top. Like I don't know what happens to me when I get up there, but it's like wild. It gets crazy. So I don't know. I'm very like sí pero no. I'm like, come up como esa que no quiere la cosa, but then I'm out there. But who knows? Maybe I will be. Maybe I'll be a studio artist and then I'll do other types of performance. You know, that would be cool. Okay, I'm gonna call. We'll have a separate call for strategy, like career. Like, let's have a career. Like, what is that called? Like blue sky dreaming session with Sokyo. I'm here for it. Let me know what's your availability after the conference. Like,
I'm up for it. The
Okay.
moment you want.
okay.
So, okay, last question. Politics. How do you feel your music, fits in what is happening in the US today? What's your goal? What are you trying to communicate through your music that can, bring forward some conversation?
hmm I mean, I think that I don't necessarily really have a political goal in mind or political aims. I do tend to write better when I write about something that I know, something that I really know or that is true to me. So when I do that, ultimately it becomes really political. Like ultimately then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so political, or like, oh my gosh, she's writing a protest song. But really I'm just like I'm just telling you something that I know or that I saw, so it becomes political when others make it so, but also I am aware that some of the things I talk about, like in Ushacha, I'm talking about, police brutality and like kids in cages and like deportation and like I'm touching all those things, but I'm also just touching on them because I'm thinking about it at that moment. So it's not like I'm writing this as a song that I want to be like an anthem for protest or but it's more just like my personal manifestation of rage, and I think another song like Mexican Chef off my last album came similarly, was just like I was noticing, I thought it was funny and I noticed this thing and I talked about it in my song, and then other people say like, oh, and that I'm a political artist. And I think it's fair to talk about my music that way, but ultimately I'm just writing about things that I know. I'm just writing about things that I know and that I saw. And so I think my place in like what's going on in this country or politics is just to be myself. And I think that just by saying whatever, like, and whenever an artist, like any of the artists who are featured on New Latin Wave, like whenever somebody is their authentic self and is just expressing what they think or what they know, it's automatically radical. It's radical, it's political, it's social, just by representing your authenticity, your authentic self, or your authentic artistic ideas. So ultimately, I think the role of the artist is to do that. And that if an artist is doing that, then they're automatically going to be reflecting what's around them, the times, or a future that they imagine, or a future that they would like that doesn't exist. And it's gonna, hopefully inspire people to, have new ideas or challenge the way that they think. I think that's what, great art can do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Xenia, for inviting us into your brain, because this was not the place, or the studio, it was your brain.
No.
Thank you very much. We are waiting for your album. When is this song coming out?
I have a song coming out on March 10th.
Oh my God! Now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
very excited.
People will find out.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be there supporting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you for inviting me. It's so good to be a part of this. I love what you do, and I'm excited to see it all unfold, and grateful to be a part of it. Thank you. Yay.
Bye.
Bye.